Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm Eric and I like to read, and today I have an exciting collaboration for you guys, and it is a whole bunch of booktubers recommending their favorite fantasy books. So you may have noticed that I did a video like this a little while back, and that was for sci-fi recommendations. I had so much fun with that video and getting to collaborate with all those other booktubers, and so I really wanted to do it again, and this time with fantasy. I'm thinking I'm probably going to do even more editions of this video, kind of like a little series, and we'll do a whole bunch of different genres because it's always exciting to get new recommendations for new genres. I had a lot of people reach out to me for this one, and I have a bunch of fantasy recommendation clips for you guys coming up, so get excited for that. All of these books I've watched through, they sound fantastic, and I definitely think some of these are going to be added to my ever-growing TBR. But yeah, definitely let me know in the comments down below which recommendation piqued your interest the most, and which ones you are probably going to end up trying out. I will also have all the booktubers and their channels linked in the description down below, so you can definitely go check out their channels from there and subscribe to them. Anyways, without further ado, let's get into the video and see what everybody recommended.
Hello everyone, my name is Annie and my booktube channel is my name, Annie McNulty, and thank you so much Eric for including me in this video. I am going to be recommending today The Forest of 1,000 Lanterns by Julie C. Dow. I absolutely loved this book so much. I think it is quite underrated because, let's be honest, the cover kind of is a little bit generic YA, you know what I mean? And the synopsis does not do it justice, in my opinion. So let me tell you what this book is about. It follows Shifeng, who is a beautiful peasant girl growing up under her abusive aunt, who is a witch, and she sees the fates in the cards, which is just so cool. I absolutely love the dark magic in this book. Absolutely wonderfully done. And Shifeng is destined to become the empress of where she lives, the kingdom of Fenglu. But there's a problem. There's already an empress and an emperor, so she has to leave her village and go and try and fulfill her destiny, but she will have to unleash the dark power within her in order to do that. I am telling you that the synopsis does not do it justice. Shifeng is the most ruthless, morally gray main character ever. I love her. If you are a fan of the Poppy War series, I really highly suggest this book because, in my opinion, she gives the same vibes as Rin as a main character. She is so ruthless and just so delicious to read about. I just love seeing how she manipulates the people in the palace and everything she does to get what she wants. And I highly recommend this book. I can't recommend it enough.
Hello everyone, my name is Chelsea and my YouTube channel name is NotSoSecretBookaholic. I just want to say a super quick thank you to Eric for including me in this collaboration. I'm really looking forward to finding some new fancy recommendations for myself. But one that I'm here to talk to you about today is a very recent favourite. I predominantly read fantasy, I love the books, and this is a YA fantasy and it is called A Raybearer by Jordan Ifueko. So in this book we're following our main character Tarasai, and her main goal for this book is a task given to her by her mother, only known as the Lady. Now Tarasai is craving family and people who will never leave her, and her mother gives her the opportunity to find that, but it comes with a catch. So Tarasai's task is to get close to the Crown Prince and hopefully be chosen as one of his council of 11. And once she is chosen to be one of his council, she will be close enough to be able to kill him. I absolutely fell in love with this story. I love the found family element. I love the relationships throughout this book, not only the romance relationships but the ones of friendship and family. I think they are fantastically done, and if you do happen to pick this up, feel free to come and chat to me about it over on Instagram. You can find me at NotSoSecretBookaholic, and I will happily scream about this book with anyone because I absolutely fell in love with it. I hope you like my recommendation, and I hope you find many other fantastic books in which to pick up from this video, and I can't wait to see what other creators have recommended as well.
Hi, Hello, my name is May from May Pangalang channel, where moving forward I will talk a lot more about fantasy books, especially dark fantasy, which bring me to my recommendation, The Savior Champion by Jade. This book, if you love The Hunger Games but want something a lot darker, deadlier, with a lot of swearing and forbidden romance subplot, this guy is for you. This book is about 20 men who enter this tournament called the Sovereign's Tournament, where they are fighting to the death to win the hand of the savior, the queen of the land, and rule by her side. But our main character, Tobias, he ain't one of them, okay? He ain't one of them. He just there for the coins. He needs money. In this tournament, every man who enters the tournament will get some kind of money, whether or not they win or lose. So he's like, okay, I guess I'll do it. I'll get the coin, and I guess I'll die. But eventually, his survival mode kicks in, and he would end up doing things that he never thought he would do, including falling in love for a woman that he's not supposed to fall for, which put even more targets on his back. Check the content warning first before you get into this book, and if you are okay with that, and if you think the premise sounds good, I highly, highly, highly recommend it. Pick it up, check it out, read it.
Hello everyone, I'm Michaela Kathleen from the channel MK Books. And first I wanted to thank Eric for having me participate in one of these collaborations again. The sci-fi one last time was so exciting and so fun. But as I said in that one, sci-fi is not exactly my #1 genre. But fantasy, specifically YA fantasy, is one of my top genres, so this one is even more exciting. And I'm kind of basic, so my very favorite fantasy book is Harry Potter. But everyone knows everything there is to know about Harry Potter. Maybe too much, so I'm not going to talk about this one. So that left me thinking, what are some other fantasy books that fall in my top 10 favorite books of all time? And the next one on the list would be The Inheritance Cycle, but again, I feel like everyone knows about this one. So instead, I'm going to talk about another one of the books that's kind of on my top 10 books of all time that is a fantasy book, and that is Tiger Lily by Jodi Lynn Anderson, which I feel like is not as well known, although it is a retelling of a very well-known book, and that is Peter Pan. But this retelling is a little older, quite a bit darker. I believe Tiger Lily and Peter are about 16 years old in this book, so kind of older YA fantasy. But it's just incredibly atmospheric. I would kind of describe it as dark cottagecore with a hint of fantasy. And it's sort of a deep dive into these characters. It's got a little bit of that contemporary angst to it. So if you're a fantasy fan looking for a little bit of that contemporary feel, or if you're a contemporary fan who's looking to kind of just dip your toes into fantasy, this might be the book for you, because the fantasy elements are pretty subtle, but I think that really just kind of adds to the atmosphere of the book. And of course, obviously, it's very good for fans of Peter Pan. It's got some really interesting takes on the Peter Pan lore, like the explanation for when and why people stop aging on the island is really interesting. So yeah, really just kind of a great book for everyone. It's also got this really gorgeous cover, so a really pretty addition to your shelves. So yes, if you're looking for a really atmospheric, subtle fantasy book, I would recommend Tiger Lily.
Hello, beautiful bookish people. My name is Victoria, over from the channel The Bookish Sock, and when Eric asked me to give him some fantasy recommendations, I said, how many? Because fantasy is my favorite genre. We have my YA pick, which is Legendborn by Tracy Deonn, and this is another book that was all over my feed, and I had multiple people asking me, have you picked it up yet? Because I really liked it and I think you should. So I'm gonna continue that. This book came out, I believe, in September of last year, so 2020, and the book blurb does a fantastic job at setting up expectations for this book, so let me just read you that real quick. After her mother dies in an accident, 16-year-old Bree Matthews wants nothing to do with her family memories or childhood home. A residential program for bright high schoolers at UNC Chapel Hill seems like the perfect escape, until Bree witnesses a magical attack her very first night on campus. A flying demon feeding on human energies, and a secret society of so-called legend-born students that hunt the creatures down. And a mysterious teenage mage who calls himself a Merlin and who attempts and fails to wipe Bree's memories of everything she saw. The mage's failure unlocks Bree's own unique magic and a buried memory with a hidden connection. The night her mother died, another Merlin was at the hospital. Now that Bree knows there's more to her mother's death than what's on the police report, she'll do whatever it takes to find out the truth, even if that means infiltrating the Legendborn as one of their initiates. She recruits Nick, a self-exiled Legendborn with his own grudge against the group, and their reluctant partnership pulls them deeper into the society's secrets and closer to each other. But when the Legendborn reveal themselves as the descendants of King Arthur's knights and explain that a magical war is coming, Bree has to decide how far she'll go for the truth and whether she should use her magic to take the society down or join the fight. If that at all sounds interesting to you, you definitely need to pick it up. Again, covers racism, classism, setting expectations with the people around you and not taking crap from them when they use very inappropriate language and immediately addressing that. And just, it's so cool how the magic system is worked into the real world, and just, I love a good Arthurian retelling, and this is a fabulous one, and I cannot wait for the next one to come out.
Hey Booktube, it's V from Caffeinated Covers. Break Even Books asked me to share my favorite fantasy book with y'all, and honestly, that's a hard question. Plus, I'm exhausted from work and I'm trying to get this out. But one series that I will never be tired of is the Dresden Files. I'm going to suggest that you jump in on book 3, which is Grave Peril. This is my favorite jumping off point in the series because this is where it starts to get good and where the author sort of starts to come into his own and show us what the series is really made of. The first 2 books are good, but they feel more like backstory, you know, like prequel vibes. But the first chapter of book 3 is where everything just comes together and it clicks. Dresden Files is a series about Harry Dresden, professional wizard. He's the only wizard in the Yellow Pages in Chicago, though no love potions. He specifically says that in his ad. Harry's main client is the Chicago PD's Special Investigations Unit, which is where they send all the cases that have anything supernatural to do with them so that they can find explanations that normal people can understand and not run away screaming from. In Grave Peril, Harry Dresden's beautiful female client doesn't think that she's going to make it through the night, because every time she dreams, bad things happen. But it's not just her who's having this experience. The supernatural realm is sort of like sliding into the real world's DMs over here, and just causing havoc for everyone. People are being tortured in their dreams. There's a vampire madam who really wants him to come to a party. And in this particular adventure, Harry's teamed up with a paladin named Michael to try to figure out everything. And while him and the church help Harry's client, Harry gets to help them figure out what the heck is going on. This is also the book in the series where things that are very important for the entire series as a whole start to happen. The cool thing about this series is it gets better every single book that you go through because the author basically had everything planned out from the very beginning. This series was planned to be only 20 books and a big apocalyptic trilogy to cap it all off. Now it's going to go to like 25 books and a big apocalyptic trilogy to cap it all off, but I'm not complaining. When people think of urban fantasy, they think of the Dresden Files. So if you haven't picked it up and you're even remotely interested in the genre, I highly recommend it. And start with Grave Peril. Just trust me on that.
Hi everyone. My name is Jolien and I have a Booktube channel called Julian Reads where I predominantly talk about adult fantasy books because that's the genre that I like reading the most. I absolutely adore fairy tale retellings, and recently Eric asked me what my favorite fantasy book of all time is. That is, without a doubt, Daughter of the Forest by Juliette Marillier. This is actually the first book in a trilogy, because you also have these 2 books. The trilogy is titled the Seven Waters Trilogy, but Daughter of the Forest can definitely be read as a standalone, because in each of the books of the trilogy you follow a female member of the Seven Waters family, and each of the books has a clear beginning and a clear conclusion for that character's arc. Now, Daughter of the Forest is actually a fairy tale retelling. It's a retelling of the Six Swans fairy tale by the Brothers Grimm, and in this book you follow Sorka. Sorka has 6 brothers and a father. But when her father remarries an evil sorceress, she turns the 6 brothers into swans. Sorka can undo this curse, but to do so she must perform a task. And she must do this task alone. While she is doing this, she meets all kinds of strange creatures, because yes, the fair folk do play a big role in this story and in the entire trilogy, and she finds love. This book had my favorite slow burn romance of all time. It's just so wholesome and precious. So if you're looking for a beautiful fairy tale retelling, please pick this up. Juliette Marillier is an amazing author and she can really capture that fairy tale-esque atmosphere. So yes, my favorite book of all time.
Hey, what's up you guys? My name is Megan and I run the channel Booking It. Booking It is a channel where I do a bunch of challenges, tags, reviews, just related to books. I love talking about books and I love making book friends. I'm also a future educator, so I share a lot of middle grade books if that's something you're interested in. For this tag for Break Even Books, I have 2 fantasy books that I want to recommend. The first one is A Curse So Dark and Lonely. This is a retelling of Beauty and the Beast, so it has definitely some fantasy elements in it. It's really good if you're just trying to get into fantasy. Because it's a retelling of Beauty and the Beast, it's just kind of like minor fantasy. And the next one is definitely high fantasy, A Court of Thorns and Roses. You've probably had this one recommended to you, but it is so good. It has fantasy, romance, a love triangle. It's really good. This is in the world of Fae, so that's kind of a different type of fantasy that I feel like is becoming more popular. So those are my fantasy recommendations, and I think you guys should check them out.
Hello lovely book dragons, my name is Joanna from the channel Joanna Sosa, and I am here to talk about my favorite fantasy book that I've read, which is The Final Empire by Brandon Sanderson. If you don't know what The Final Empire is about, it is basically in a very bleak world where ash falls from the sky, where everything is pretty dark and dreary. We follow a main character named Vin, and she's a street urchin, and she teams up with a thieving crew where the main leader is named Kelsier, and together they have this incredible heist planned. That is in a nutshell what this book is about, and the reason I love it so much is because this book feels like home. I mean, I have read it multiple times. I loved it every time that I've read it more than the previous time, and that is mainly because of the fantastic characters. Yes, you have a wonderful realized world that is very complex and very, very big and vast, especially if you continue on with the trilogy. Yes, you have a phenomenal magic system that makes sense, that is logical if you like that kind of stuff. Yes, you have great writing. Yes, you have great foreshadowing. Yes, this has great rereadability. But the best thing about this book, to me at least, is the characters. And as I am a character-driven reader, this was basically made for me. The characters in this book feel like real people, like they could just live on a different planet and be doing their own things right now, and you just got to share a part of their life. And that is what I love. And not only do you have this with the main characters, which you end up loving and rooting for, and they start becoming just such big parts of your lives. Like, so many of the characters in this book are on my all-time favorite list of characters ever. But the secondary characters are also just as important and as well fleshed out. So the focus is on every character that you meet, is very well developed, and I love it for that. Another reason this is my all-time favorite book is it introduced me to not only Brandon Sanderson's Cosmere, which is one of my favorite universes to read, and it introduced me to Brandon Sanderson, who is one of my favorite authors, but this is also the book that transitioned me from being a YA fantasy reader to an adult fantasy reader. The best part is, if you don't like this book, or if you don't want to continue with the trilogy, you have a pretty self-contained story in this first novel. I would definitely recommend that you continue, because this is also coincidentally my favorite trilogy of all time. But if you, after this book, don't want to continue on for some reason, you get the closure of the plot of this book in this book. On my channel, I focus mainly on adult fantasy books. I also read YA fantasy. I am trying to branch out into sci-fi and read a little bit more historical fiction and literary fiction, which are genres that I am not very well versed in. I also really like doing collaborations and live shows with friends, so if you are interested, that is my channel.
Hi, my name is Lily and I'm from the channel Literary Lily. I talk a lot about books, obviously, but also about autism and neurodiversity, so come and check out my channel if that's what you're interested in. My favourite fantasy book was actually really hard to pick, and I ended up going for a childhood favourite that I reread recently that I still really love and highly rate, and that is Northchild by Edith Patu. Sorry, this is really awkward because I have these 3 wonderful editions that I wanted to show you at once, so I'm going to show you them individually. This is my favourite edition. It's like a squishy soft hardcover, and this, I don't know if you can still buy it, but it is a special edition. It comes with like a ribbon and everything, and oh, it's so pretty. Just Yes. And then the other one I have is like the original paperback version, which is like the similar cover to the special edition, but still kind of pretty. And then this is the reprinted version of the cover that you can buy now, and you will see it in the UK in stores in the middle grade section. So just for simplicity, I'm going to show you this version because it is the version that you'll be able to see in stores, even though it's like not the cover that I'm used to. This is actually called East in the US, but in the UK it's called Northchild. This is an adaptation of a Nordic fairy tale, and it's really, really good. It tells a story of a girl named Rose. She grows up in a family where her mother is incredibly superstitious. Her mother believes that the direction in which you are facing when you are born indicates how your personality is going to be. She never wants to have a north-facing child because she was told that if she was to ever have a north-facing child, they would die crushed under ice and snow. So she decides to try and have a child for every point of the compass except north. But then her eastborn child, who seems to be her favourite, dies of an illness, so she decides to replace this child. And when she does, she accidentally has a child facing north instead of east. Rose is that north-facing child. She's told all growing up that she was an east-facing child, but she doesn't seem to fit into the stereotypes of an east child. Instead, she loves to adventure and go and explore and get dirty and muddy when she's supposed to want to stay at home and do things like needlework. Throughout her childhood, she sees this white bear appearing, and then one day when her family is really struggling, her sister's very ill, they don't have very much money, and they're about to lose their farm, the white bear, which is a polar bear, appears at their front door and says that if Rose comes away with him, that he can solve all of her family's problems. So Rose agrees because she thinks it's going to save her sister's life, and she goes to live with this bear in his castle in the ice for a year. And there's so much more to this story. There's kind of like two halves. Can't tell you much more of that because it would be big spoilers, but it is just so good. It's currently shelved in the middle grade, but it's kind of a bridging book between middle grade and young adult. It's a bit of an older middle grade and a young adult. It just is so good. I read this when I was small and it's remained a favourite even after rereading. So yeah, it was really hard to choose my favourite fantasy book, but this may not be my favourite per se because I have a lot of favourites, but it is one that I feel like people haven't read and is kind of underhyped, so I wanted to hype this book up a little bit for you. So thank you, Eric, for giving me the chance to hype up one of my favourite books.
Hey everyone, my name is Megan and my channel is about lifestyle and fashion. And the book that I wanted to recommend today, the fantasy book, is called Girls of Paper and Fire by Natasha Gann. I got this book in an Owl Crate subscription box, and I never heard of the author or the book before. First chapter of the book, I was hooked, and I got the second book in the series called Girls of Storm and Shadow, and there's a third book in the series that's supposed to come out in November of this year, which I'm really excited about. Pretty much the main character, her name is Lee, and she is taken from her village and from her family to go be a slave in the castle in another land, another fantasy land in the book. And she faces many challenges in the book. I find she goes kind of from the shy character that she is to a very, very courageous character. She dreams of escape in the book to get back to her family. She falls in love. Her love in the book is a forbidden love, and if you read the book, you'll find out why it's forbidden. And she goes through many obstacles in the book, and I just find she goes from a shy girl and she becomes courageous and brave, and she really fights for her family, fights for her significant other in the book. And I find this book, the main character becomes stronger, and I really, really can relate to this character. I think anybody can relate to this character 100%. So I hope that you check out this fantasy book and you like it just as much as I did.
Hi Eric, thank you for letting me on your channel again. So fantasy is my biggest genre that I have on my bookcase. It is a genre that I love to read, so the recommendations were a lot. I could just sit here and recommend fantasy to you all day, but I'm going to recommend a YA fantasy that I've recently come across, and that is thanks to Jade from Jade Reads. And this is Spellslinger by Sebastian de Castell. He is a wizard with words. It was, for a book that's over 300 pages, it was such a quick read. The characters, development, the plot is brilliant, and it has a squirrel cat. I mean, the squirrel cat is just an epic character. Rikus is brilliant, and this follows a boy called Kel, and they're in a tribe of people. He's in a tribe of people that, running up to his 16th birthday, he's getting ready for some magical trials that he needs to pass in order to get his major's name. And it's all about spiking your bands and growing your magic to show how powerful you are. However, poor Kel, rather than his magic growing, it ends up fading, and this worries him because his dad is a very powerful mage and he's not having the best of times. He then bumps into Ferius. She is a non-magic wielder, but she has so many things to teach him, and this just follows him on his journey about finding out about magic, about non-magic folk, and it's just a wholesome book. I teared up in this, I laughed out loud at this, and I would 100% recommend Sebastian de Castell's work to everybody that I meet. I really, really hope that if you do read this, anybody that watches this, then please let me know what you think, because I just need more people to read this. It's a brilliant series. So far, I've only read 2 books, but so far I'm really loving the series, and yeah, I 100% recommend it to anybody. So, like I said, if you do read it, then please let me know your thoughts, because I need to find more Sebastian de Castell lovers. Bye.
Hi guys, my name is Kira and my channel is called The Book Bella, and today I'm going to be recommending the graphic novel series Monstrous for my fantasy pick. This is actually a fantasy series that I cannot stop recommending, and I cannot tell you guys how much I love this one. The world of this is just so vast. Micah Halfwolf has something inside of her that's just kind of like brewing, and she really hasn't uncovered all of the secrets to it yet. Right at the beginning, right at the get-go from this, she has a portion of her arm missing from the elbow down, and the thing that's inside of her pretty much tells her that it got so hungry it had to gnaw off her own arm. This is definitely not a graphic novel that's for the faint of heart, because it is a very dark graphic novel, but the world, the fantasy, the illustrations, everything is so on point, and there's just so much to it that it's still just expanding. And currently it is not a completed graphic novel, it is still an ongoing series, but it is so amazing. I'm just going to show you some of the examples in here of some of the artwork, but it is absolutely stunning. So I definitely recommend this series. The artwork alone in this is definitely worth it. And every single issue of this brings us one step closer to finding out the secrets that have been plaguing her, about the thing that's living inside of her. Even with all the darkness that is just kind of rushing through all the pages, all the multi-layers and everything, you have a little bit of softness to this also. There are cats in this all over the place with multiple tails that are supporting our protagonist. They're just the cutest little things, but also very mischievous and kind of a catalyst at times too. So just so many layers to peel back with this series, and so many things to explore. And even 4 volumes later, we are still peeling back the layers and uncovering the things that have been buried for a very long time, both spiritually and physically. I just think that this is just such a fabulous graphic novel, and I highly, highly, highly recommend it.
Hello, Eric. Hello, Marcus. Hello, YouTube. May I recommend The Dragon of the Lost Sea? There's dragons, there's magic, there's so much world building.
Hey loves! So if you are not familiar with me, I'm Rye from Rye's Reading Corner. And again, thank you Eric for doing another one of these videos. This is super exciting and I cannot wait to see your finished project because the last one was so amazing. So today I'm here to give you a fantasy recommendation, and fantasy is something that I have really started to fall in love with, I would say the past year and a half. That's now like the majority of what I read. So the book that I wanted to recommend for all of you is something that I think anybody with any type of fantasy experience could enjoy. So someone that is a beginner fantasy lover or someone that's been reading fantasy for years. And this is a book that I just recently read and it will 100% be on my top books of 2021. And that is, if I can hold the book up right, Amari and the Night Brothers by B.B. Alston. So this is actually a middle grade book, but sometimes I actually forgot I was reading a middle grade book because it is just so captivating and well written. So this is a story about a young girl. Her name is Amari, and she gets bullied a lot. She deals with a lot of racism in her school that she attends. She lives in kind of a rougher area, but she attends a school where she is definitely on the minority. And then her brother goes missing, and a lot of people are just saying that he got involved with the wrong group, and that something must have happened to him. But she finds some secrets about him, and she starts to become entered into like this elite like academy type thing for magic, and she has to kind of go through almost like a little trials to try and figure out what has happened to her brother and what has, why has he disappeared. But this book, the world building in this is just phenomenal. It does take place in between like a magical setting as well as like the real world, and there are some crossovers between the fantasy world and the real world. This was like my childhood vision. I always imagined what it would be like if mythical creatures were living in disguise in our real world, and this book touches upon it. Amari is such an amazing character. She is driven, she is hardworking, and her love for her mom and her brother is so strong, and her push to find what really happened to her brother drives everything that she does, and I really kind of relate to that. So yes, so if you're looking for a great fantasy book that is easy to understand and just puts you into this magical world, I would highly recommend Amari and the Night Brothers.
Hello everybody, my name is Sarah, and Eric kindly invited me over to share a fantasy recommendation with you, of which I have a lot, which was why narrowing it down to just one book or series was really hard, and I ended up going the route of series I am currently most obsessed with instead of all-time favorite series because nostalgia. And the series I'm currently most obsessed with is A Chorus of Dragons by Chen Lyons. This is, once it's done, gonna be a 5-book series. Currently there's 4 books out, and the series starts with the Ruin of Kings. And instead of summarizing the series, let me instead give you some keywords. First keyword: the main character is the epitome of disaster bisexual, and he's a male character, which doesn't happen often, like disaster by male character. Second keyword: polyamory. Third keyword: dragons, also undead dragons. Fourth keyword: krakens, also undead krakens. Sixth keyword, or are we at the 5th? I don't know, but family drama, because reincarnations and body swapping, and oh my god, it's so confusing, but it's just so good. I love it. And just go and pick this series up if you want all the queerness, all the dragons, all the gods walking among mortals, all the drama. Also, if you just want a cast of main characters who do things and hope for the best instead of actually knowing what they're doing. Honestly, this series is great, and if you want more recommendations where this one came from, check out my channel, which is Voyage Through Worlds, where I talk mostly about adult high fantasy, but especially about adult high fantasy written by women and genderqueer people. And yeah, I'd love it if you would come by to my channel and say hello. But that was it for my recommendation.
Hi everyone, my name is Zugu and I'm from the channel Scientist Reading World. I'm a full-time scientist. I work on the chemical engineer investigation part, on catalyst investigation. And in my free time, I have a booktube channel where I basically talk about books and do book tags because they are fun. So I read majorly fantasy, historical fiction, contemporary, from YA to middle grade to adult. A lot of genres, a lot of different ages. You will find almost everything. Now, I'm here on Eric's behalf. Thank you so much, Eric, for this collaboration. I'm so excited to see what others will suggest on fantasy. And let's talk about my 2 series that I will recommend on fantasy. I decided to bring some young adult fantasies because why not? I think they are so much fun. And let's start. The first one is one of my favorite series of all time, and is The House of Night by Kristen Cass and PC Cast. This book series takes a new revamping on the vampire trope. Here the vampires are not beaten to be born, they are marked, and the mark comes from the goddess of night, Nyx, who is the protector of the vampires. When a teenager, usually there are teenagers, is marked, they have to go to the House of Night, which is basically a school where he must learn about the vampires and all the history, because he has to live with vampires to survive. There's a tricky part here because when you are marked, you don't know if you will be a full-grown vampire. Your body can reject the change. Can be on the first day, or it can be even on your last day before you become a full-grown vampire. So it's very a roll the dice till we see what happened and what's going to happen. Our main character is Zoe, and we follow her as she's marked and she goes to the school. But from the beginning we know she's special and she has a special destiny to fulfill. It has a lot of the cliche tropes of the chosen one, of the good versus evil, but it's a so entertaining book series because we have a lot of lore, a lot of tropes, a lot of heavy mythology. The magic system is very interesting because it comes from the ancient rituals and comes from the elements, but you have also seers, you have people who receives like poems from the goddess directly, and they wrote as like prophecies. So it has a lot of elements. The characters are so fun, they are so light but also so deep. You grow attached to all of them very quickly, very easily. It's a very fun and it's very fast reading. Even though there are 12 books in the series, it's definitely a series that it grabs you from the first book and will continue just like very fast pass through all the adventures that Zoe and her friends will go to defeat the evil that is threatening the world. So the second series I want to talk about is The Secret of the Immortal Nicholas Flamel by Michael Scott. This is the first volume, The Alchemist, and we follow in this one 2 twins, Josh and Sophie, as they met Nicholas Flamel and his wife Perenelle, as they are trying to escape from Dr. John Dee, the physician from the Queen Elizabeth court. This book has basically the trope of the good versus evil, as Perenelle and Nicholas protect the Codex, a very ancient and powerful book that, for example, grants them the potion of the immortality. And John Dee is an ally from the Dark Forces, where he basically wants to steal the Codex for the Dark Forces to conquer the world. Joss and Sophie are caught in the middle of this, and they have to help Nicholas and Perenelle because without the book, they cannot. I think it's a full moon cycle. They have like to live, and without the potion, they will instantly die. This book, what I liked about this series is the heavy lore and the heavy folklore that he has. We go from the Greek mythology to the Norse mythology to the Egyptian mythology. We go from American stories to Europeans. We have a lot of historical figures that will appear on the books. I believe the magic system is based on elemental magic also. They have like big teachers that can teach them to wield the fire, the water, the air, and it's a blast, you know. Each adventure it has a lot of mystical creatures. If you like those type of things, a lot of different creatures, a lot of different mythologies, gods, goddess. These books are amazing, and the last book is definitely mind-blowing, the game-changing, because nothing is what you expect, and it's everything. Like, it's a great ending. So I hope you guys check out one of these series and we can discuss them later. And again, thank you, Eric, for inviting me for this collaboration. I'm so delighted. Bye.
And that's it for the video, guys. Thank you to all the booktubers that decided to collaborate with me for this one. I really appreciate you guys sending me all your clips and all your fantasy recommendations. These all sounded fantastic, and I'm really looking forward to looking up more about them. And now for our independent bookstore shoutout. Okay guys, today's independent bookstore shoutout is for Black Bond Books, And this is their website. If you're in BC, you get flat rate $8 shipping. So that is pretty cool. Anyways, I love their site. They have a reel for all books that you can pre-order coming out. They have hot off the press. And if you go further down, they have a calendar with virtual events on it so that it's easy to like keep track of what's happening when for all these new books coming out, which is so fantastic. Also, if you go further down, they have a bestsellers for Canadian reads, which is phenomenal in my opinion. Ooh, I have this one. And then if you go further down, there is a section for LGBTQ, and I thought that was amazing. Like, that is so heartwarming to see this. So yeah, pretty cool. Definitely go check out this website if you get a chance. They are located in Ladner, British Columbia. Anyways, if you guys want to support me, I have a Patreon and a Ko-fi page, which I'll put in the description down below, as well as a link to buy my bookmarks. You guys know the drill. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Hit that bell notification button so you get notified when I post new videos. I post my videos on Mondays and Thursdays. And until next time, keep on reading.